On IMEI, opportunities and challenges for developing advanced therapies, particularly in Europe. I am Roberto Gradnik, outgoing president of EBE and CEO of Exaltis, a small startup specialized in urogenital disease. And I will chair this today's session. Before we start, just a note for who is following, people who are following us through the webcast. You can ask questions during the Q&A that will follow the short presentations by using Twitter with the hashtag EBE2016, EBE2016. And we will receive your questions and try to answer them. So without further introduction, today we have the pleasure of having the not so new anymore, but still relatively new executive director of IMEI, Pierre Meulien. J'espère que la prononciation est bonne. That was so kind to come and share here with us his thoughts on IMEI and IMEI 2, of course, which is ongoing, and is courageous enough to be ready to answer our questions. IMEI is an important tool. It's first a very important, successful example of private-public partnerships. I think one of the few on this scale. US, for example, is looking at it as an example for once. Normally we look to them as an example. For once we have a successful example. And I think we are all very confident that IMEI 2 will be even more a success. But for what EBE is concerned, although attractive is the program is, there are still major challenges for small and medium companies to really actively participate in this program. So this is also part of an effort that our association is doing in trying to help companies of all sizes to really participate, contribute, and profit from these cooperation programs. So I'm sure that we will have questions for Pierre and for the other panelists. So following the opening keynote speech from Pierre, we will have a roundtable discussion, which I will introduce afterwards with some actors actually that have or direct or indirect experience with IMEI. But I will introduce this later, so I would like now to ask Pierre to do his keynote speech. Please, Pierre, either from here or standing, as you prefer.
If it's okay, I'll do it from here. That's all right with everyone. I can see everyone. So thank you very much, Roberto, and EBE for inviting me to talk to you about IMI. And what I'm going to do is to start off with a little bit of an overview of IMI, just to remind everybody what we're trying to do and what we are, and then get into a little more in terms of challenges around advanced therapies and of course I think the main discussions will be around, so how do SMEs and other mid-sized biotech companies get involved, what are the challenges, how can we solve them together, and so on and so forth. So if I'm in charge of this, I am. So the background, of course, is that there are many drivers for change in innovative medicines, driven, of course, by the science and technology, which is moving at an amazing rate, as we all know. But together, there are other challenges out there: public health challenges, demand on health provision, economic environments are changing, industry is changing, and we really need to do some very creative thinking in terms of business models and new business models in this new environment. This is no news to you that we're in a very high-risk business. It's a very inefficient process as well, because we tend to compete with each other and repeat a lot of things. a lot of duplication. This is very expensive, long timelines. It's actually quite difficult to keep up with the science and keep the science in going through drug development. Trying to integrate that in an efficient way is tricky. And we all know about the challenges in clinical trial design, especially when we're talking about more personalized treatments and orphan drugs and so on and so forth. And the regulatory pathways, which are as well a moving thing, as we all know, sometimes not optimized for patient needs. So what IMI was created to do was to try and facilitate bringing new knowledge closer to the patient through an integrated platform involving many stakeholders from both the public and private sectors. And we try and doing that, because it's a public-private partnership, we have to make sure that we respond both to industry needs and to the public. What is the value to the public with our public funds? And as you know, the European Parliament challenges us a lot in terms of the value for the European citizen, which is a good question to ask. And so we try and fund projects in the innovation process that is streamlined, to try and streamline the process through this end-to-end integration, right from the research piece to the consumer, the payer, the HTA bodies, the regulatory bodies, and so on and so forth. And we're obviously positioned downstream of fundamental research that's funded through other mechanisms, and quite separate but complementary mandates to things like the European Institute for Technology Health, who are very focused on commercialization and entrepreneurship in that way. So as you know, we do have significant... do I need to point this somewhere? We do have access to significant resources. We're talking about a €5 billion plus partnership between the European Commission that supplies half of these resources in cash, and the FPA companies and their partners who supply the other half in kind. And I'll come to a more detailed look at that partnership for IMI2. In the key concepts are that we play in a non-competitive or pre-competitive collaborative research space where companies will work together and are not afraid to do so. We put out competitive calls for proposals, and I'll talk a little bit about that process in a minute. But we are talking about very much an open innovation and open collaborative public-private partnerships, so data sharing, dissemination of results, and so on and so forth. So far, what's in play is quite interesting, because the ecosystem that we've created, and this is the allocation of the first €2 billion, from half from public and half from private, has given rise to a community of over 7,000 researchers. We have 169 SMEs involved. These are data from IMI1 only. Over 800 academic teams, over nearly 500 FPA teams, patient organizations, and of course regulators. And we measure our we measure our success at various places in the continuum. Of course, our academic and industry players want to publish, and that's very good. And so they can do, and that's one of the impacts. But there are other impacts, setting new standards for industry, the use, the take-up of some of this knowledge into industry processes, and we measure that, the impact on regulatory frameworks, and ultimately the benefits to patients that we will see hopefully down the line. And this is all driven by better science. Actually, I will skip that previous slide. So this is a little bit of a focus on IMI 2, the budget you can see on the left-hand side of your slide is the public part, 1.6 billion. On the right-hand side is the FPA and their partners, another 1.6 billion. But this is a more open scenario than IMI 1. And we obviously, in order to reach our goals, we need to involve more than the pharmaceutical industry. We need to involve ICT companies, imaging companies, diagnostic companies, small and medium enterprises, biotechnology companies, in order to get to where we need to go. Because the goals are extremely ambitious. You know, we want to increase the success rate in clinical trials. We want to speed up the earlier stages of drug development. We want to develop new treatments for unmet need. We want to develop new biomarkers and diagnostics. And all this to improve and streamline and make more efficient the drug development process. I'm not having great success with this little machine here. As I say, the fundamental scientific driver is this idea of a personalized approach. And I don't care whether we call it personalized, stratified, precision, doesn't matter. But basically the underlying biology, we're understanding more about the underlying biology of disease and understanding that we need to stratify patients into different cohorts following their own biology, and because that will drive intervention in different ways. Now, so that's all of what we do, I think, is driven by that kind of fact. Now, in terms of the process, I'm not going to, this was my little diagram about some of the genetic contribution of disease. And of course, in advanced therapies, we are going to be focusing on the left-hand side of this picture, where you get the orphan diseases, the single Mendelian genetic diseases, other disorders with prominent genetic factors. Pediatric cancer would be one of those. And advanced therapies will be first looked at on that left-hand side, and not probably on the right-hand side, where it's much more complex. And of course, we want to get there in the end, but that brings a more complicated structure to the thing. Okay, so in IMI, as you know, we have in general a two-stage procedure where a topic is defined. And this topic definition takes place when industry partners get together and say, here is a challenge. They articulate a challenge. We are coming together, Novartis, Merck, Lilly, GSK. We're going to work together, and we're going to commit 20, 30 million euro to this challenge. When that happens, that liberates public funding to roughly the same amount, so we can now plan a call, and that call has to, of course, involve public sector players, including SMEs, who are going to address that challenge, and they compete for that for that chance to address the challenge with the private sector, and that's what happens. So stage one is a competitive process. We ask independent evaluators to choose. They choose one consortium from the public that then gets a chance to sit down with the private sector who've decided to work on this and move forward like that. And the second stage is evaluated as well by independent experts to make sure that the public-private consortium is going to fit well with what we do. So a typical IMI project would look like this, where industrial partners align themselves around a real challenge for the industry and agree to work together and commit funding, resources. New ideas from the public sector, including SMEs and so on, are needed to address that challenge. And we're lucky to be able to do things at a scale that very few other initiatives can work on. And so that scale is key for us to be able to be transformative for the industry. Now I'm going to give you just one example of a project that is like, well, we're going to talk about advanced therapies now, where a platform type approach is needed, including big companies and small companies to address a specific issue. And this project, well, there are several actually, because I added a few. So these are just going to mention STEM Bank, which is a project that looks at taking pluripotent stem cells from different disease states, and EBISC, which is the banking project, which is going to bank a lot of these things under standards, using catalogs, and make these things available to everyone. The project I did want to talk about in a little more detail is this one, which is a Zoonosis Anticipation and Preparedness Initiative, which looks at, and you can see the partners in this, many university partners, big FPIA partners, Marial, Boehringer Ingelheim, AstraZeneca, and several SMEs, Dyadic and Harbour. They have come together in order to address this thing. They wanted to build a common platform, a common pipeline for rapidly identifying and scaling up immunogens from different viruses. You can imagine that this might be very important if we have an outbreak of another unknown, like a Zika-like or an Ebola-like virus, where we don't know exactly where we are. Screening immunogens, selecting an expression system, and quickly manufacturing at scale that at least we can try and do some clinical assessments very quickly. And this is what they're doing in this project. And they've chosen three model viruses for this: Rift Valley, Schmallenberg virus, and MERS. And I'm looking at that one because when we look at advanced therapies, our ongoing thinking is the following, and we've had a few workshops on this. There's a concept paper that's on our website. If you haven't seen it, I have some copies here. I think I have about 20 copies of the concept paper for you to take home. And this is on our website for consultation, so you can please read it and respond. Say we've missed things, we need to include this or that. But our thinking is, so here are the key issues in this field. We need in vitro and in vivo model systems. We need vector systems for gene therapy. We need gene editing technologies. We need a regulatory environment for preclinical and clinical testing. We need to understand how we're going to do clinical trials in this. How are we going to, what about control groups? All of this kind of stuff. We need, of course, to communicate to the general public. And there are manufacturing challenges that we might want to address as a public-private partnership, together, instead of all separately and competing. And so that platform, we have a European platform, then people could use that platform and compete like mad post that kind of collaborative phase. And of course, we're very interested in what business models are going to be generated in terms of pricing, reimbursement, and so on and so forth. And of course, we have the hospital exemption issue, which I know has hit some companies quite hard, because it's tricky to get into that arena when the same rules may not apply to. It's not a level playing field. So basically, of course, I'm biased, but I think that IMI is a great platform for bringing people together. It's a neutral platform. It's a place where we encourage co-investment, either resources or cash or whatever, for people who align themselves around a specific goal. So we can be a real magnet for collaboration and co-investment. And it's open. We are open for business. And if you tell me that, well, we can't make the model work because it's so difficult, because your IP regime is wrong, or this is right, we're open for discussion. Yes, there are rules within and there are frameworks within which we have to play, but we need to understand if there really is a problem, really is an issue, or can we work around those issues. So I'm going to leave it like that, Roberto. I hope I haven't been too long. And open it up for questions, and then I'm sure there'll be some good questions at the panel stage as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pierre. I would propose, Pierre, that we actually go to the round table and have a good quick question and answer session, cumulative after the round table, because I'm sure some of our panelists will raise some questions, and will make the interactive session at the end even more productive. So I would ask the panelists to come here and join us. Actually, we'll move on the side. So on the panel we have Eduardo Bravo, CEO of Digenix, company that brought advanced therapies on the European market, and my successor as EBE president. We have Saladin Shibou from Novartis, and we have Olga Schmoll from Acuris, who is also a participant as a small company in an IMA program. So each of the panelists will have 10 minutes max, 5 to 10, but 10 max, space to make their contribution, and then really we will try to have a rich and interactive session, both between the panelists, the audience, and the people online. So Eduardo, you want to start?
Yes. So I will take you through what we've experienced as some of the challenges getting ATMPs to the market and having a success, and see how many of those challenges we can hopefully solve through IMI. This is a thing that was posted in 1907 for people wanting to go to the Antarctic for the first time. But it really represents as well, the people that we're looking for in getting into advanced therapies development. So you're more than happy to apply. By the way, more than 2,000 people applied to that job in 1907. So why Digenix, and why I'm here, not as EBE president, but as you know, probably the company that has gone the furthest in bringing ATMPs to the market. We have Control Select as the first ATMP. I think we have an issue there. Yeah, the problem is Control Select, which we will discuss in a minute. Control Select, which was the first product to be approved, and then in August of last year and March of this year, we announced the first ever positive phase 3 data with allogeneic stem cell therapy. You know the story of Control Select, in 10 years to get the product approved in 2009 and then reimbursed in 3 countries. Unfortunately, as we will discuss later, the rules of the game changed from what we were promised to what was delivered. So the product has never been a success, as it has been competing with cheaper, lower quality products that have been approved through the hospital exemption, and we can discuss that in a minute. But more importantly, if I can get this one, is the 11 years to get 601, and this is the journey that we were mentioning with long clinical trials in phase 1, phase 2, then moving into a failure in phase 3, back to allogeneic compound, phase 2, phase 3, and finally filing for approval in March of this year. So hopefully 601 will become the first cell therapy product to be available as allogeneic stem cell therapy in Europe. What are the opportunities? I think that the biggest opportunity in developing advanced therapies is actually that there's plenty of diseases for which traditional therapies do not work. And that represents a huge opportunity. And I think that that's the focus of all the companies that are working there, is not to find another product to solve headaches is to really try to cure something that with existing therapies is not treatable, and that's at least our goal. And clinical trials are coming, results of late stage clinical trials are coming, so hopefully we will be able to deliver on that, and I'm very convinced that this will be really a great step in medicine. But together with the opportunities remain the challenges, and let's face it, it's been unfortunately that opportunity has been chased mainly by very small biotechs with very little resources that were trying, to catch the big prize with very little investment, and as most of the times things do not happen. And those challenges are I will cover them very, very briefly. The first one is getting an idea. And the problem with the cell therapy in particular is that there's a lot of ideas out there, but the IP protection around those ideas is very weak, and the protection is not great from the regulators. So, without proper protection, then it's very difficult to make money on the long term, and it's very difficult to get people to commit money in the first place. Second thing is that you underestimate how much it takes to get a product all the way, and I've just shown you, 10 years for Control Select, 11 years for 601, and that represents, a difficulty in terms of resources on two things: getting the right team on board and recruiting the right team, and that's one of the issues in Europe compared to the US, is getting enough experienced people to join starting biotech. And then the second one is money, and it doesn't matter how much they tell you will need. You need more. So raising the money is a real challenge. Third one, and this is probably the one that will be easiest to be covered through IMI, is this idea that manufacturing one product is very easy. Manufacturing 1,000 times the same product every time, it's a challenge, and manufacturing it in a cost-effective way today is not doable. So I think that the enabling technologies are catching up, but that's really an area in which I believe that a lot of work can be done by all the companies together. Very important one is the regulatory hurdle. I still believe that the regulators should be as tough with advanced therapies as they are with the rest of the products. Safety goes first, and we need to demonstrate efficacy. So I don't think that there should be any shortcuts. I think that we need to have is a stable regulatory system and something that we believe will not change. Key is the regulatory hurdle, and it appears that the difficult part is getting the clinical data until you have the clinical data, and then you really aim for regulatory approval. And once you have regulatory approval, you think that you've done it. No, you still need to convince payers that they are not used to these new modalities. Curing patients with just one therapy is something that the payers in the countries are not used to, and it really goes against the model in which they will pay for a pill. A cheap pill every day forever is maybe more expensive than a big chunk of money being paid up front. But that's not the way the payers work, and that means that we're going to be facing some significant hurdles there. And as I was mentioning, the rules of the game. We cannot have rules of the game that change. I always make the same joke. You cannot go to the thinking that you're going to play golf with your golf clubs and your ball and with your shorts, and then find that you're going to be playing rugby because you're going to go home really damaged. So the regulatory needs to put the rules, and the rules needs to stay long term, because it takes 10 years to get there. So if in the middle of that match the rules change, there's no way that you can have a predictable future, and that means that investors will not have the certainty that they require to put their money and be successful. And the last one, and I would love to get Pierre's view on how we can get IMI to help us, is luck. And my favorite phrase is Napoleon's: I don't want good generals, I want lucky generals. I'm trying to recruit lucky managers. I'm doing better than I did at the beginning, but this is something that we should not. We should not play small. Luck is a big thing. You never know. Sometimes you're just unlucky. Sometimes you're just lucky. So it's one that we should not lose sight from. So finally, my last slide. I know that it's difficult. Challenges are great, and not a lot of people, are deterred because of the barriers. Some companies are still unconvinced because this is unproven territories. But I am convinced that advanced therapies will be the next pillar in the healthcare. and that we will be curing diseases that up until today were impossible to cure. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. As I said before, we leave the discussion for the end, so I would ask Saladin from definitely a big pharma, but very much committed to advanced therapies, to give his view.
Thank you, and so I'm pleased to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And maybe I should introduce myself first. Don't worry, I have no slides. I give you a break for the slides, and just like to share some of my experience over the past years. So I'm from Novartis. I spent more than 25 years now in industry, in the translational medicine environment. I'm the chair of the InnoMeds. This is the research director group who is defining what projects should be approved for IMI. And I'm also a member of the IMI board together with Pierre. I'm in that journey. It's also a long journey for several years, at almost the beginning of the IMI conception. And I have learned a lot of things, and I'd like to share with you some of the learnings, and those are not, it's on purpose that I would like to share that with you, because we try to get some of those learnings and see how we can apply them for advanced therapies, and how we can move the journey in a better way. So one of the first learning is, when I've started, it was almost difficult, almost impossible to have big pharma talking to each other. So we were in the same room because somebody said you need to meet, but we were not sure what we were supposed to do. And everyone was saying, okay, you sit there, don't commit to do anything. And that's some 10 years ago, and it's amazing the evolution that we can see now. So we are carrying projects together. And I remember some 7 years ago, I was in charge within that small committee to define, to create a definition of what competitive is and what is non-competitive. And it was a lively discussion. I failed. I was not able to identify something that would suit everyone. So there was nothing that you can say, this is a clear definition. But what I can tell you is that the level of what is competitive from what is non-competitive has evolved tremendously. We are working now on projects where we are on targets, for example, validation of targets, de-risking of targets that some people would have said, this is crazy to work on that. This is really a competitive field. And actually it's not. The competition is still there, and I think it's healthy to have a competition, but the competition is somewhere else. And so, Eduardo, you mentioned some of the hurdles. Regulatory environment, this is not a competition. We need to work together. This is not something that Tygenix alone is going to be resolving, or Novartis. So we need to work as a joint effort to define what is the best environment, not only for us, but for the patients, because that's what counts at the end. So it has evolved in a really significant way, to the point that we are not at the end yet. I think it's still in a there's this growing field of, we need to work more closely to be more effective. I can see that all the time. And so some of the examples from the projects we have in IMI are testifying that this is really a big change. And I hope that with the small companies now, we can see somehow the same kind of trend. I know it's a different concept, because the assets are focused, so it's very difficult to share. But still, I would encourage you really to think about what can you do together that could accelerate your development. You mentioned some of the aspects of manufacturing, etc. There's no point for you to develop the manufacturing. Maybe in a larger scale, if you can develop some manufacturing capabilities in Europe that are being accepted, that would certainly ease everyone's agenda. So the other thing is, Pierre mentioned earlier how the projects are being formed in IMI, and that the industry is meeting and defining what the projects should be. There's another path, which is that we are open for ideas coming from wherever. Small companies or academics or institutions, they are coming, they are telling us about some ideas, some diseases that we have to work on, or some technology, some areas that are disruptive, and we consider everything. We respond in a polite way, most of the time, to say whether it's doable or not. The only point is that I want to clarify it here, because that question comes often, and I'm sure, Pierre, you have the same thing in mind. If an idea comes from an academic group or from an SME, and if this is a good idea, that SME may not be in a position to receive the funding from the EU. It has to be a competitive approach. So therefore, if the idea is good, then it has to be taken by the industry. Industry formulates a project and is launching the project, as Pierre mentioned earlier, in the first phase, and then the competition starts. Our experience is when an institution or an academic came with an idea, they were very well prepared, they knew what they were talking about, and they were forming a consortium that was very relevant. And we cannot anticipate that they will win, but it's a competition. So therefore, I would encourage you to come with ideas, but don't think that because it's your idea that you will get the money from the IMI. I think it's fair to say it, and we have to tell the people from the start. But come with proposals. We are not it's not a closed group, so we were very open, and we are also looking for transformative projects. If this is something that you can do on your own or a company can do on its own, this is not interesting. We are really looking for disruptive projects that would make our environment much more competitive here. And it is more competitive. And I was just sharing recently some discussions we have with our US colleagues. IMI is not something that is existing elsewhere in the world. It's much more complicated to set up that scheme that Pierre has shown earlier, that you have an academic group or public-founded group with private groups. Public-private partnership is amazing what we have been doing, and it's very difficult to do that in the US. The mix between public money and private money is not something that is easy to manage. So this is something that is unique, and I believe that this is the only way that we will be moving in our industry in the future, because we are facing a lot of challenges. You name it, the pricing and the cost of drugs and the cost of innovation is just terrible. So we need to find another way to evolve. And so, in a conclusion, I just want to say that we've started with basic science in IMI in terms of the projects, and we continue to work on basic science. We moved into the drug development, clinical, regulatory, and now we have launched this year some really exciting projects that have met a lot of enthusiasm in the community, which are called big data for better outcome, which is based on market access. You know, how can we define the market access? Is defining how we are going to define the value of what we produce in the future for the healthcare system. So we are refining, hopefully we're participating to refining the healthcare system. So IMI started small in a focused area, and now it's touching the whole field from early to late stage and market access. And I'll take questions later. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, and let's conclude the introduction to the roundtable with Holger, who has a direct experience of participating in an IMI program. Holger.
Yeah, just waiting for a slide. So, thank you. So it's about the experience of a small company with the IMI 1 program that we must state at the beginning. So we started 2013. The program was up and running in 15, but it was one of the last calls of IMI 1. And I know that many of the experience I would like to tell you here are already solved in IMI 2, made a little bit better in this field. So one short introduction. Who is IQRIS? Very short. We are a spin-out from Bayer Anti-Infectives Research Group in 2006, now 10 years ago, and since then we are totally independent, not Bayer, have no Bayer shares here anymore. And our approach is to develop new anti-infectives, antivirals, antibacterials with new mode of actions and with coming from new chemical classes. And I will focus in this presentation on the antibiotics because this is our project we have in the IMI program. You can see it here at the pipeline. We have many projects ongoing. The phase 3 project is already out-licensed to Merck in the US, but we have also phase 2 projects, phase 1 projects, and this was the problem for us, having so many projects and having only about 50 people, 50 FTEs, that we can't handle this and that we can't finance it totally by our own. And that's why we looked for a solution for our hospital antibiotic, which is in the end of the preclinical stage, how we can deal with this. it's really difficult here with this remote control. So, what is this project about? It's called IKE 499, and it's a gram-negative resistance breaker. So, active against multi-drug resistant strains, including, for example, Acinetobacter, which is one of the major medical needs in this field. And what we would like to do is to start the clinical development, phase 1, hopefully in the third quarter of this year. So, what was the... It will work sometime.
Yeah, it's gone.
Oh, it's gone too far. So, let's say SME to initiate an own IMI call is not, that's what you are thinking first. We had a problem that IQ's clinical development is in general not eligible for most of the publicly available funding calls because we are not an SME according to the EU definition. We have problems with our financial investors having so much investments that we have to consolidate them, then we are not an SME. And the funding opportunities for clinical development are rare, as we all know. And then we took the decision to apply for EBE membership 2013, not only for this call, but this was also an advantage. And to be an EBE FPR partner in a consortium, providing our own in-kind contribution. And that is what many small companies are not aware. You don't get any funds here from the European Union, from IMI. You have to contribute with your own in-kind contribution, and funding is done with the academic partners, other partners in the consortium. So we started a collaboration with these academic partners with the aim to develop our project up to the end of phase 2. This project is called Combacter Magnet, and as you see, the FPR companies are Icuris, AstraZeneca. These are the two main companies in this call, Basilea, GSK, Sanofi. And there you can see Icuris is now, let's say, in the Champions League here as a very small company. And as we have the European Football Championship at this time, you can see it in this way, to have a picture here. So we are participating at this championship, but we have only 11 players and no bus driver. So this is the goalkeeper is also the bus driver, and the physiotherapist is also not there, but the center forward have to do this. So we have many things to do as a small company, and we have we are really lucky to have AstraZeneca MedImmune on the board, who took over the coordinator role for this project, because this is a real heavy effort. And we have in the total project 34 academic partners and SMEs. So I think this is one you must know. This is a big group and you have to handle this. And you see all the efforts we have to do on one of the next slides. So the first statement is very clear. It's excellent to have it, because we have now not only a co-funding of our academic partners who can bring our project together with us forward into development, but we have also a chance to work with Europe's leading experts in our field. And this is a unique network. This is a real chance from my point of view that is important here. But what are the challenges? So I was asked to give some feedback. What are challenges for a small company? The first one are that you have with every consortium. So you have to clarify IP questions. There's an IP rule defined in IMI, but you have to define many details with all your project partners. you have diverse business interests between EBE, FPA companies, so the industry, and academic partners. They are looking for publications, which is sometimes, we all know, difficult for us with regard to the patenting. What we all need, especially in small companies, is flexibility. So this development have to change quickly, and we have now, of course, a description of work, like in every other, let's say, call or collaboration. And organization governance, I mentioned it just earlier. You can see here a small picture about the different groups that you have to work with to have a governance in this real big consortium. Some experience, 1.5 years after the start of the project. In general, it's really more flexible than every other public-private partnership, public funding, whatever I've ever seen. So if you are looking to timelines, budgets, so to change that is possible. And if you are looking to, for example, to national funding programs, this is really, especially in Germany, critical if you have to change, and you have to change in every program because development is not, will not work as planned, as always. You have a high demand for active communication with all your partners and also with the IMI. And this is a feedback for you, Pierre. Sometimes it's difficult because the scientific officers have a huge workload. So they are really great. Please forward it to them. But you have so many programs, and I think it would be good to expand your crew sometimes. One, let's say, detailed program is subcontracting. Not the consortium cannot do everything. You have to subcontract, and in IMI this is there's a rule. It's only restricted to exceptional cases, to minor tasks, not to the major task. But you have to subcontract, and then budgets are allocated to a partner. And if you have to subcontract in another way, you have to change budgets. So you have huge administrative efforts to be handled there. And the partners, and these are in our cases public entities, have to follow their own rules for subcontracting. That means public bidding calls, which take really time if you are above some limits there. And a big problem, I don't know if it's solved in IMI too, is the value-added tax problem. So the value-added tax is not considered it as eligible cost, and if you have to subcontract and a public partner have to subcontract who is not eligible for to deduct the input tax, they have a problem because these costs are with them and they have no money. What is really a big chance in our field is a program called ClinNet. So this is a combination of several clinical sites all over Europe. This is a really big chance, a really great idea, but it will take some time until it works really. And I hope that it can be also exported to the other indications. It's now in the antibacterial fields established, but the knowledge and the national coordinators at the sites is very different, and we are not at the goal yet, the final goal. And one very important thing is that the importance of quality assurance has not been reached each and every academic partner. And that is what we have a real problem now. So the quality and regulatory challenge that we have as an industry partner, the academic partners have another view on that, and this is difficult if you are looking to the regulatory pathway. And it's unfortunately so. You have to select one consortium, and there are a lot of partners in, and you are at the beginning. It's not clear if each and every partner is able to conduct his task, to do it. And we have seen it in our project. in an analytical part, the expertise was not there, so they have failed in quality audits now, and then we have a problem to subcontract, and then we have a public bidding process, so we have it now as in-kind contribution for us, because it was easier, but this is not the aim. As a summary, great opportunity, no doubt, but also a major challenge for a small company to handle this big consortium. And that's my last sentence. I have to thank IMI, and I have to thank also our FPA partners, especially MedImmune and AstraZeneca, for all the efforts to bring us into the project. So they did a great job, but it's a long way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Holger, for this really live testimonial of what it means being an IMEI participating. So now we are opening for discussion, both between the panelists here in the room and online. Just to remember people that are watching us online, you can interact and ask questions via Twitter using the hashtag EBE 2016. But let's start here between the panel, and I will use my privilege as chairman to throw actually to the panel one obvious but important question. We said at the beginning that EBE is trying to foster more participation of small, medium companies. And I was thinking what you said at the beginning, Saladin, that at the beginning even big companies were not so keen on cooperation. I guess talking about small, medium companies participating was not even on the horizon at that time. So how, I would throw to you and Pierre mainly, basically the question, how is your feeling today, because I know what our feeling is, of participation of small, medium companies into IMA2?
Let me start, and Pierre, you will maybe complete or disagree. I think it has been improved significantly. We have put in our objective that we need at least to have 20% of SMEs, participating in IMI. We saw that was a realistic objective. We wanted to achieve that objective, and we will achieve it. But I think it's not enough. Life and innovation happens with small companies, particularly in this area of drug development. There's tons of ideas. And if I think about advanced therapies, with the exception of some big companies like my company, most of it comes from small companies, the innovation. So science is there, the assets are there, and it gets stuck somewhere. So we need more, and that's why I'm here today. And we need to communicate more and create opportunities for people to think like Holger, that if you would not have to manage the consortium, because it's heavy, probably for you, the rest, it's all benefit, right? So for the companies, you learn a lot, you have the experienced people. It's a lot of benefits. So I think people sometimes are afraid to come because they are afraid of losing their IP. That's the main. I'm sure we are going to talk about it. But I would encourage people to try, at least to probe it, and we'll be happy to discuss. But maybe Pierre, you have something to add.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you, Saladin, but just in addition to this, it's all to do with choosing the right topic. It's, as I think as somebody said before, it's not going to be for everyone. It's not going to be the tool for everyone for everything. So the topic, the type of project that we would work together on needs to be one that's suitable for the IMI model. And that means that it needs to be something in the pre-competitive, non-competitive space where people can see the value of a joint effort. So it has to be something big, like a platform where academics, SMEs, and big companies can work together, where you can all use the value coming out of the results of coming out of whatever platform that is for mutual benefit, and for you to get a competitive advantage out of it for whatever you want to do. The target for SME participation is 20%, and I think it's a good target because we obviously need SMEs to do to contribute intellectually and from the innovative point of view to our programs. It's absolutely essential. So we can't do without you. So we have to find a way to work together.
So SMEs, why you're not participating? Speak up. So, any question from panel or the floor?
Can I just add one thing
Sure.
to start the
Sure.
discussion going? Because we did invite a few SME players just for a kind of mini workshop. Some who are already involved in IMI project, and some who tried and failed, and some who are looking to see. So what are some of the issues? And Ahmed was there, so I'm sure he's not shy, so he's going to pipe up. But we did manage to kind of say, well, it suits some of the topics suit some types of companies. So there's sort of a by dissection of the thing. So first, it's whether you're a technology service provider or a product-driven company. So that's one issue. And then the other issue was whether you were a VC funded or a founder funded SME. Now that's a simplification, because I'm sure we'll find a way of involving everyone. But that was one of the things that came out of that meeting. And so it may be easier for some SMEs who are, please note that there was an antibody company involved in the ZAPI project that I showed you, and the other company I think is they've got fungal expression systems. So these are platform things, and they're not companies that have a product, an oncology product or this product, but. You know what? We've just, with Saladin's guidance, we've just created an oncology SGG for the first time in IMI, and we're going to be looking at how to structure an oncology project, which I'm sure will involve small and big companies. And Ahmed is an oncology player.
No.
You heard me before?
Yeah.
So, as a CEO of an SME, I will ask you a pragmatic question. How do you effectively select the project? How do you design a code? I think for an SME it's important to clearly know how the project are selected.
I start. And so first of all, doing IMI 1, it was based on some people, experts, discussing about the project and then framing it and coming to going to the board for approval. We've changed that for IMI 2. We've created what is called now strategic governing groups. If you have heard the term SGG, that's what it means, strategic governing groups. We have now seven strategic governing groups, and so we have oncology, the most recently created one, infectious disease, metabolic disorder, neurodegeneration, translational safety. It's not really a disease, but it's an area, and did I say immunology. And so what we have in those strategic governing groups are experts, company experts in the field. Let's say oncology. You're in the oncology area. We have the heads of oncology from all the companies sitting together on a regular basis and defining what are the hurdles, what are the problems in our environment in oncology, resistance, or diagnostic, whatever you can frame. So that has been mapped. They spend usually a long time brainstorming, defining what the scope should be. They're not coming with projects. They define the scope, and then that's made available, to everyone. And then companies will come and say, within that scope, those are the kind of projects that we would like to work on. In the I can give you tons of examples, but that's where the projects are coming. So again, industry is defining the projects based on the frame that has been defined by the experts on an area. And the reason we did the strategy governing groups is to avoid that projects are coming from all over the place, not in a coherent way. For example, in diabetes, we did a lot of projects in diabetes, and they're much needed. And now with this SGG cardiovascular, there's a very excellent group of experts in diabetes, and they have mapped, the different pace of the development of the disease of diabetes. And working in the late phase of diabetes, it's not making sense for IMI. So the idea is to move into the early phase, when the disease is not completely established, but it's there. And that's what we would like to work on. We're not repeating what others are doing. So just to give you an example, so just frame where the transformative aspect is, and not just repeating what other companies or other consortium have been doing. I hope I answered to your question.
If I can just add one thing, because I think I know where you're coming from, Ahmed. So if you have an idea of a topic, you can bring that to IMI in various ways, right? But it has to be one that's industry-wide. That's not your thing, right? It's got to be industry-wide. And that can be, that can be brought into the thinking of the group designing the topic.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah, we have a question here from Twitter from Victoria English. She's asking, will 2017 see the development of the first CAR-T therapies approved? And if so, how will this change the trajectory of ATMP development in IMI?
Yeah. That first CAR-T may come from Novartis, hopefully. So, yeah, so we hope that we will be able in 2017 to have that first target. So scientifically, this is fabulous. Okay, and again, I won't specifically talk about CAR-T, but I talk about ATMPs in general. From the science perspective, it's amazing what we can do. Could be chondrocyte, could be whatever. The question is the cost of goods. And I guess that's what is behind some of those questions. How are you going to position that product? It's going to cost a lot of money, to take the cells, manipulate the cells and bring them back. But it works. It will cure patients. Let's put it in the conditioner now. So what is the price of that? That's what we have been discussing now within the IMI, where we have what Pierre mentioned. We have had several workshops. And we have framed, what we are going to talk about in terms of ATMP and how IMI could contribute. And there will be the technical aspects of drug development and how we can ensure that the regulatory environment is going to be stable, clear, and helping, having access to those drugs to patients. But also, we are going to talk about what is the business model that we can put together for those therapies, because we need to invent a new business model for those. Otherwise, you are just going to desperate. The pioneers, the people who are courageous, to take the long journey that Eduardo was mentioning. And again, science is not the problem. It's the commercial aspect, and the regulatory sense. That's what we are going to test. One answer to that is from the big data for better outcome. So defining what an outcome is, and we are going to do that now. This is called published for all hematologic malignancies. We are going to define for each of those diseases what is the outcome. How do we define it? How do we measure it? And not we, Novartis or companies. This is going to be done with payers, regulators, and all the stakeholders. This call is ongoing. We are in the stage 2. It's amazing, the response we had from the public and from the payers. And again, first time that the payers, regulators, and people who are not used to talk to each other rather than fighting are around the same table defining what the scope should be, what is the outcome. And then the CAR-T, once it will be available, people will say, okay, what is the value of that to the society? What is the value to the healthcare system? And then the price and everything could follow. So that's where we are for the CAR-T, but in general for the ATMP, a lot of things to be done. But if I can ask I would like to ask the question for the SMEs and the people who are working in the ATMPs. How do you define your return on investment from the start? You know, knowing all the problems that I've just mentioned, the manufacturing, the cost of goods, etc. What keeps you going? And what do you? And that's the first question. And second, what can we do? And what can we do about it? How can we help?
Wow. How long do we have? No, I think that what we keep us going and what has kept us going is to see the need for patients. I mean, you need to see the doctors treating those patients and how excited they are. And when you have something that cures patients that up until today had no answer, you simply cannot stop. That's one thing. B, you always think that, you know, at one point you're going to convince the world that you're right, and that indeed society will be ready to pay for some of these treatments. If you think about, you know, cartilage defects, it's a much more difficult proposition. I mean, it's very important eventually for some young patients to avoid, you know, knee replacement, but you're not talking about, you know, not being able to get out from home or, you know, dying of some diseases. So I also think that, you know, there the cost to society is going to be different. Also the cost of goods, you know, we move from autologous to allogeneic simply because, you know, with the cost of goods of autologous for knee replacement on the standards that were required by the authorities, because I think that that's something that we're not taking into consideration. Like, you know, we have other companies doing the production in a different way, approved in certain countries, that, you know, can sell at a fraction of our cost and still make money. So, you know, we can produce cartilage products much cheaper than what we're producing, but we're not allowed. So if they force a certain quality, then the cost goes with the quality. Once you have that cost, if you want to make money, you need to add some margin, you need to recuperate all the investment, so then the price becomes not feasible, and that's the reason why at the end Condor Select was not a commercial success. With the allogeneic products that we're developing, we believe that the need is much bigger. The cost of manufacturing with an allogeneic product is smaller, not a fraction of the overall cost, again, given the quality at which we're being asked to manufacture, which I think is probably not far from what it should be. And, you know, we still believe that with the products we are developing, and now that's part of the discussion we're having, which indications we follow, are only those in which we believe there will be a willingness to pay from payers that will allow us to make money despite the high cost of goods, relative high cost of goods. So it's really the same. Thanks God we're not in this you know, very complex autologous model, or, you know, some of the gene therapy products in which, you know, you are talking, you know, hundreds of thousands of euros eventually of cost of goods. Then it's a completely different story. Sorry for the long answer.
Question there, yes?
Thank you. Yes, so my name is James Kennedy. I work for an association called the IBHML Alliance. It's an association of industries and researchers that work on in silico or predictive medicine. So this topic is a little bit left field for me, but I came here to learn. It's been a while since I looked at the regulatory framework for ATMPs, but if memory serves correctly, it's been highly criticized over the last number of years for not really leading to the kind of uptake of ATMPs that we would like to see in the ATMP regulation. I'm just interested to see what does the panel think about the current regulatory framework for ATMPs and its any suggestions on how it could be improved.
Who wants to take this?
Can I have a go? Maybe I should get Maria to have a go at it, because probably she knows better. But, you know, I think that the ATMPs is not as bad as some people mention it, and I think that we're criticizing the regulation for not delivering the uptake. You know, regulation was in place in 2008. You know, then you start putting products in development. Tell me in which of the diseases, 7 years later, you have hundreds of products approved. So, you know, this is a field that has started relatively short time ago, in which, you know, it was very small companies that were taking the development of those compounds forward, and that means that you have unpowered clinical trials, probably the wrong clinical trials sometimes, and therefore the development has simply not happened. I think that we're starting to see the first well-designed, large enough clinical trials results, and I think that with those results, the first products will come. But I will ask people to go back to the start of the monoclonal antibodies which today are, standard. The first 4 monoclonal antibodies failed. And it took, years for the first monoclonal antibody to make it to the market. And remember, they were produced in these small bioreactors. Now they are produced in, I don't know how big the bioreactors are. So I think that we're at the infancy. The problem is, at one point, there was so much promised, and there's so much research at institutions that want to take a product all the way, from patient number 2 to the market, that, it looks like the ATMP regulation is actually a difficulty. I think that it's improvable, yes. I think that the biggest deterrent for the ATMP development is actually the hospital exemption, which is actually the rule that allows for non-properly developed products to be competing on an equal basis. That is for me the biggest issue with the existing ATMP regulation.
Any other comment?
We were thinking when we did the workshop last year about the concept of an ATMP drug act, like we had the Orphan Drug Act, some kind of stimulation, for companies to get to move it, and not for the industry to make more benefits. It's really to benefits of the patients. Having a lot of those products, being developed now, how can you accelerate it? The Orphan Drug Act has been very powerful, right? And so that's what we are aiming at, and we hope with the IMI and again, IMI as a neutral broker, right? So being able to have all around the table, the payers, the regulators, and everyone to come with that kind of concept.
If you look at the change that has happened since immuno-oncology appeared and the big pharmas started putting money behind it, that part, which is much newer, is coming much quicker than the cell therapy space. So again, has nothing to do, it's the same legislation. I mean, you're talking about a CAR T-Bs maybe being in the market in 2017, but it's taken us 12 years to be on the market in 2017. The CAR T-Bs have, a fraction of that time. Same legislation, same regulation, Novartis money, Tygenix money. And it works like this. I mean, it takes for us, ages to put together a phase 3. You cannot recruit quickly enough. You don't have the money to pay for everything. People do things in parallel rather than one after the other. They take more risk. They do the big trials. They get the data. So I think that getting the big companies in the field will speed up the development immensely. And I think that things like IMI may solve some of the issues that today makes us not capable of competing, enabling technologies, reimbursement, the two big ones.
Other comment? Yes, Andrea?
About the last part, I was, pardon me for doing it, but I was to ask a very specific question. Is it something that IMI could envision to try different business models for ATMPs? I mean, as Pierre mentioned, the first ATMPs will be on the very rare single gene diseases, so they cannot be general. They have to be very specific to a certain extent, unless you develop a platform technology. Can we think of presenting an idea for a platform business model, a platform organization that applies to this kind of projects and products?
Yeah, so I think the answer is absolutely yes, and there is even a precedent of this because we have, as you know, and Holger has shown you a little bit of the program. We have a very large program on antimicrobial resistance, and one of the chapters in that program is looking at business models. It's a project in of itself to propose new business models in this area because nobody can understand how it's going to work. So companies are going to invest, small and large, and public funds are going to be invested in bringing a new antimicrobial to the market that hopefully will be of some use in some of the big problems that we're going to face in the next 10 years. The first thing that any health authority is going to tell any physician once that drug has got to the market is, by the way, never use this. Only use this under extreme circumstances. So there's no market for these things. So how is that going to work? It means a new way of doing things, because they have to be there, whether you're talking about an AMR drug or a drug for a rare disease or whatever. These things have to be available, but how? What financial model? I don't think anybody knows, but we have to work on it together with the economists, with the payers, with the ministers of health, and find a solution. So yes, it can be a project. It's a super topic for a project.
Actually, if I can complete that, so with the papers that you have some examples now. When we did the workshop, there were several pillars, that were identified that are critical, and one of them is the business models. And there was a group we had breakout sessions, was working on brainstorming about the different kinds of models, annuity payments, or different kinds of reimbursement that we could think about. Yeah, it's definitely a critical topic. So if you have some ideas, happy to follow that up.
Maybe a question about CAR-T and I would say more generally about adoptive T-cell therapy. They can today, at least, only address niche markets. We all agree with that. And on the other hand, we are still facing some issues, such as no induction of memory cells, toxicity, and so on. So what is today the answer of Novartis about this new technology? But I would say we are just in the beginning of it.
I think you made the answer yourself. It's just the beginning of it, but it's very promising. It's hematologic malignancies, so solid tumors are being tested now, so it's complicated. You mentioned the safety aspect, but the generation number one of those CAR-T is what it is. The next generations will be allo, probably, and we will have a way to control those cells. There are new technologies coming from some companies where you take the CAR-T, or you transduce the cells basically, and then you reinfuse the CAR-Ts to the patients, and but nothing happens. So the CAR-Ts will not be activated. They will be activated only if you inject a substrate to the patients, and then the substrate recognizes the CAR-T and the tumor, and that activates. The good thing is that the CAR-Ts will stay there. So once you stop administrating the substrate, it stops, nothing happens. So once the tumors are eliminated, it's fine. And if another tumor comes, you could just put another substrate. So this is the kind of, I'm just giving you an idea on the next generations that are coming now. It's just version 1.0, and I don't know how many versions we'll have in the future.
Other questions? If not, I will use again my privilege to throw another question, going a little bit in a different direction, and I go back to the possibility for small, medium companies to participate. One, and it was mentioned, I think, by you, one of the issues perceived, at least, I don't know how reality is the IP regulations within IMI, yeah? And the fear of small companies, product-based, not platform-based, that they would be penalized by the IP rules within IMI. What do you think, Pierre? Is this reality, or is it just a fear which should not exist?
Well, so it's not a simple answer, obviously. So we have rules that govern intellectual property, including background, foreground, sideground, and so on and so forth. If a company has a product, this can be any company, big or small, that comes with a background intellectual property, that remains the ownership of that party, right? If there are inventions within the consortium that we call foreground, that is shared amongst the parties. And at the end of the project, that knowledge has to be shared to the research community for research purposes. And commercial exploitation is negotiated between the parties first of all, before the project starts, so that they know where they stand. Obviously, it is going to depend on the specific what the company is bringing to the table, and to ensure they need to be comfortable with what they're bringing, and what the protection they have related to their background is. But that's, I would just encourage people to talk to us about if they have an idea, if they want to get involved, if they have an idea of some consortium that they'd like to build, or in response to a call that we would put out, come and talk to us about your particular issue, and hopefully we can find a solution to it. The other thing,
some points here on the IP that just quick that talking to the IMI office does not mean talking to the industry. So, some people are afraid, because there's a bias potential view from the industry. So that's why I really encourage you to talk to the IMI office. It's a very competent group. To take the opportunity to congratulate the work done, and that's what makes the difference between the success of IMI. There's a group behind it that is understanding what's happening. You mentioned the scientific officers, and it's an infrastructure that is behind it and makes it happen daily. So therefore, go and talk to the IMI office. They will tell you what makes sense and what does not make sense. If you ask to the big industry, there's a biased view. So don't, on the IP, talk to the IMI office. It's better.
but not me. We have 2 or 3 intellectual property experts who will sort those things out for you.
Good. Holger?
From my side, yes, it's true. The longest discussion during the preparation of our project agreement was about IP. And I see it is good to have the IMI rules, but you have to work on the details. And for example, the background is very clear. So if you, like us, want to develop a compound and you have a patent on this compound, okay, that's easy going. The foreground is, of course, the most exciting part here. And we, for example, found a solution that all IP that is related to our compound is with us. There are some compensation to the consortium or to the other inventors, of course. It's regulated. But we have the right to use, to commercialize all this foreground that is related to our compound. And this is, I think, a must in this field. Maybe it's easier for clinical trials than for early research, of course. But this was a must for us, and this was a clear no-go if this was not solved.
No, the wrong one. No.
Thank you. I hate to drag it back to regulatory, but something you just said struck a bit of a chord when you said the OMP regulation, perhaps a need for something similar to incentivize this area as well. It took us 10 years to come up with an OMP regulation over here when the US had it already. The first major products under their system were already coming out in the market by the time we were even looking at starting to develop it. We completed recently, or relatively recently, a 2-year project that included, built into it, the need to look at regulatory systems as well. To say, right, when we complete this project, when it's done, what needs to change in order for this to be enabled? If we're including, for example, business models and the concept of what business models can we create to make this work, is there a need to include in IMI early on? Well, what will the regulatory framework need to look like in order to put these type of things on the market and to encourage further this type of work?
That's a great question, and the answer is obviously yes. I don't think we can do anything in advanced therapies without having the regulatory bodies involved in the project. So there's lots of precedent for that as well. So we have a project called Adapt Smart, which is looking specifically at regulatory frameworks in different situations and how adaptive pathways, adaptive clinical trials can be driven in a particular project. There's a big one in Alzheimer's disease where we're creating a 6,000 person cohort of deep phenotype people who hopefully could get into using drugs earlier on in disease setting. The regulatory authorities are absolutely involved in that. So I think, I think the EMA has just had a workshop on advanced therapies, and I think they're going to come out. I don't know if they've published anything on this. They put something on their website. You know, they are involved. They're going to be moving as well. It's not. We're not sitting in an ecosystem that's rigid. We're in an ecosystem that's fluid. So I think even though there might be instances where the US are ahead or this whatever is ahead, you know, the EMA and European regulatory authorities are very active in this field.
But we have 27 of them, so it takes very long.
So if I may continue on this line, we talked about regulatory, and I agree with you that particularly European agency is very active and proactive on this. Where I see a little less proactivity is in market access and reimbursement authorities. And I was really positively surprised that in your paper for consultation you have also these aspects, which honestly I didn't think would be of interest for IMI, yeah? Because actually one of the challenges of IMI that it helps innovation, but then who pays for it? Mm. So it's actually, I think, it's very good. But I would like to ask you, what is your idea? How can IMI help, if it can, also in the aspect of market access?
Well, it's a great question, Roberto, and I don't think IMI has a choice in the matter. So we collectively, I would qualify us in the room and maybe many on the webcam as technology pushers, and we're offering. We have an offer out there, but we have been hopeless at articulating value to those who are actually going to pay for this. And how are payers going to get their heads around balancing the books? They're going to have to make choices between this and that. Their budgets are not expandable. So we have to find a way, both from the technology pusher side, to articulate that economic value. So we need bunches of health economists in our projects, and we need to bridge that dialogue with the people who are actually going to pay for these this new innovation. And I don't think that we haven't bridged that gap in a way that's been productive or as productive as it could be.
So do you think that within IMI one could think of funding a pilot project on some innovative way of market access, for example?
Sure, I think. I mean, Saladin will comment, but I don't see why not. I don't see any reason why we'd have a problem with that.
Yeah, I think so I'm happy that we already have an action. I hope some people are taking some notes, so that will be one for you to follow up on that potential pilot. But I mentioned earlier this project called Big Data for Better Outcome, and maybe I can just explain how it works. So as I said, I mentioned the hematologic malignancies, but we also have Alzheimer, heart failure, prostate cancer is coming, and we have a list of diseases that will come now. So, but 3 are already published: heart failure, hematologic malignancies, 7 diseases within this area, and Alzheimer. So what is it? So it's again redefining those diseases based on what is the cost to the society, to the healthcare system, and how do you define it? Okay, what are the data that you need to generate to define the cost and the evolution of the disease and how much it's going to be paid? It's going to be cost to the society, and this is done with the payers. So they have they, in each of the countries, they have their social security systems. They have tons of databases. So this is going to be, I'm not giving you the details because it is not official yet, but it's going to happen over the summer, that they will finalize the grant agreement. But they have access to data that we don't have access to. So they will open that, and we will mine those data for the interest of everyone, and say let's say for an ALL patient, in oncology, what is the progression of those disease patients? What is the medication that they receive? How many hospitalizations they have? So what's the cost? And how do you track all of that? So this is going to be defined, and then obviously at the end of this process, once you have identified what's the cost or what's the progress, what's the business model you can put together to define a potential reimbursement system if you come with something that is innovative and hopefully curing. So that's starting now.
That's very good, yes. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to make a comment regarding the Adapt Smart, because actually the payers, the HTA, are involved in the discussions. So it's really, there's a big effort to bring them also at the table. So it doesn't stop with the regulators. We really want to look to the whole process, till the prescription to the patient by the physician. And one of the big questions from the payers in this type of process is exit strategy. So we are, okay, if we're making a decision early on, then how can we make sure that at a certain moment we can exit this? So there's lots of things that makes for difficult discussion, but it's really critical. What I mean is they're really critical to get them, and they want to be involved, because you cannot design half the process not involving the rest of the stakeholders. So, but it's slow, and it's sometimes painful discussion, but there's a lot of goodwill around the table.
But it's happening at the same time. It's happening.
It's happening.
It
So
was
that's
not
what
the
I mean.
case.
That's my only message. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment, question? Yes, Dwayne.
Yeah, thank you. Getting back to the outcomes, we can measure the outcomes, and that's great if we can get access to the data. But the problem is, eventually, there's going to need to be a time politically where, if we look at, say, let's look at the Sovaldi type drugs, the hepatitis C drugs, that the person who's doing the liver transplant, who is no longer doing the liver transplant, that money needs to come back to the person who's making the investment, the much larger investment in the drug on the front end. It's basically a return on investment. What's currently in the pipeline to deal with the politics of that, the political reality of taking budget out of other piles and then moving those piles into another pile, that pile's never had that budget moved into that pile before? I mean, that's a political problem.
I would pass that question to Eduardo.
I will talk about hospital exception.
Yeah, you're right. There's a political context, but the healthcare systems in most of the European countries, including the US now, and most of the countries in the world, is struggling. Healthcare system is struggling. So everyone has an interest, to find a solution to that. And looking at the drug, the cost of the drug by itself, it's not going to be an argument anymore. If you need to look at the overall cost of the healthcare system. We see that coming now more and more, and to find a realistic solution. So that's the principle of the pilot on this big data for better outcome. So have a pilot, test it, and see how it evolves. We have been surprised by the response from the public partners in this. It's amazing. I'm so excited that this is going to be published right there, that we can talk about it. We cannot mention the names of the partners yet, but by midsummer, I think this should be available. Yeah. So you would see that there's a response. So the public is willing to move, and it's going to be country by country, as you can imagine. So there's different political agenda for different countries.
But even in the countries where there's no look at the US, where you have the data. It's all, because in Europe we're going to have one problem, which is a lot of the money is fixed costs. So you're not going to reduce the hospital cost, you're not going to reduce the doctor cost, the nurses cost, and all that. Whether you do more transplants or less transplants. So unfortunately, the 20%, which is the drug part of the overall health bill, is the only part that you can shrink and that you can try to reduce. in the US, you are having the same discussions on the hepatitis C or the same discussions on the gene therapy reimbursement as we will have in Europe, even if everything is considered as a cost. One, because the one-time cost is a certainty day one, and the second one is after a certain age, as you know, it will be cost-effective that people die. So then using a cost-effective model only on things that are going to, keep a 70-year-old cancer patient alive for the next 20 years is probably, from a health economics point of view, it's a big mistake. So how we're going to solve those issues is, I think that's the debate that will need to happen, which is, are we going to expand the healthcare budget? Because we're going to live longer, we want to live healthier, and there's going to be more therapies available to do so, each of which are going to be more expensive than the previous one. So at one point, the blanket, as an old boss told me, the blanket, you cannot extend the blanket. So if we start moving the blanket up, your feet will get out. And I think that we've reached the size of the blanket, and now I think there is going to be a political discussion.
So, any other question within the panel or online? Good. Then let me ask the last on the panel, and let me come back on the small medium companies. I think there was a very good move in IMA2, changing the definition of small medium companies for who can benefit from cash contribution. I think this was a very welcome move. Have you actually already seen practical consequences of this? Are actually companies that previously would not be eligible rushing to come to AMI, or still the other barriers are still keeping them at bay?
So
I'm talking about the one that were excluded.
The mid-size companies. I'd have to see what. I'm not aware of any mid-sized companies that were excluded that may or be coming in, but that might be just because I don't know exactly the fine detail. But I think mid-sized companies, obviously, they can either contribute and be part of the topic definition process and be on the right-hand side of the thing, or they can be part of the public consortium and receive money. And that, as you know, the cutoff for that is 500 million euro revenue.
Yeah.
And maybe they're still thinking about which side of the equation they would like to, and that will be company dependent, I'm sure. But I can't say that there's been a huge sort of shift in what we're seeing, but it's very early days as well in IMI2. I don't know if Saladin, if you have any.
No, I don't have any example.
I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing, if we're now going to talk about oncology and advanced therapies, I wouldn't be surprised if those kind of topics were more amenable to that size of company, and wouldn't be surprised at all if we saw some coming in.
If I can comment from how I see it as a participating company. I think that the bad part is that, what you want is to be on the left part, because at the end you want to be defining probably at least part of the topic, which then suddenly you are a contributor, not a receiver, which already is wrong. And then for me the most difficult part is that you are a contributor on human resources. I mean, I have to say that I almost prefer to pay money than to commit human resources. I mean, my most scarce resource is people. So, to think that I need to commit people to be working on a project for everyone, it's almost impossible. So that for me is the biggest challenge.
Well, then you need to be on the left-hand side.
I know, but I mean, I want to define to a certain, but I will only, no, I know, that's the reason. You cannot have the best of both worlds, which is what we want, of course, that's the typical thing. So we need to convince someone to define the project so we can participate on the right side. That's maybe the right way of doing it. The second thing that I think we need to do more, and that's also for EBE, and then I put my EBE hat, is that I think that we need to do more in communicating IMI too. And Pierre, I think that you're doing a great effort, and Salim as well, but I think that even for me, being part of the group, IMI2 is still partially unknown. So I think that for the big majority of the SMEs in the biotech space, people will still have the idea of this, IMI, this is for big companies, there's IP problem, and by the way, you don't get the money, you need to contribute. Those are the three probably tags associated to IMI. So we need to do an extra work in sending the right messages, and I think that your presence here is extremely appreciated because that's exactly what we need.
Yeah. Eduardo, where if I could just follow up with that with a question, where is the best forum or fora for us to send that message, apart from groups like this? Are there other places where there's a critical mass of SMEs and mid-sized companies that we can go in and make presentations and so on and so forth? Because we're very interested in doing that.
I think that probably we need to, from shooting from the hip here, but probably also through some of the national biotech associations. I think that we need, because they probably have the depth in terms of getting to their members probably at a larger scale than we have here.
So I'm glad you said that, because we're having this discussion with the states representative group of IMI, which is part of our governance, and those are in each member state, and they should have access to these biotech hubs and so on and clusters. So we're aggressively and proactively going after them to say, what are the opportunities in your country? We will come, we will talk about this issue.
I think Holger and then Saladin.
I totally agree. The national biotech groups may be the best part, and you are invited to the German group. I think it's no problem to present there at one of the next conferences. I totally agree with you, Eduardo. It's difficult. You have to choose for one of the sites. And if you have a program and would like to influence a call, then you have to be on the EBE Aspire side, but then not be a beneficiary, but a contributor. And to bring more SMEs in the position to be a contributor, I think it's necessary to have smaller calls and smaller consortia. And I know that sometimes I read some papers that IMI is looking for more extended calls, and that is difficult for small companies. So we are in the lucky position to have AstraZeneca with us, who deals with most of the coordination task, but it's difficult also for us having this partner. And having smaller calls, I think it's possible in IMI to my knowledge. You have to be only one peer company now, and it's in the smaller consortium, which was not possible in IMI 1. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that's, I think, the most important thing. If you shrink this down, then smaller companies have the chance to contribute.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wanted just to comment on that, and to you, Eduardo, and to Holger's point. Having a smaller call is possible, right? We are not looking, I mean, I don't know whether we have said that we wanted to have larger ones. We want to have transformative projects. The size of the number is not the point. But I think what you could think about, is there's such a flexibility, and that's about the knowing how it works, that if you are part of a project, of a call where it's a 10 million in kind, and you have 10 companies, so you would assume that every company would give 1 million. That's not true. You can give 100,000 and others give more. So, and that happens all the time. We do not need to have the same amount of in-kind contribution by the partners. So we are very flexible, and we, of course, we look at, the big companies, of course, would have to be respectful, and give a little bit more. So you could be at the table with less in-kind. You can have a temp, person that you could assign, for some time, and that's fine. And you pay your in-kind, and you are at the table. So you see, there's flexibility here. I can't go into all the details, but and this is some people are complaining about the complexity because of the flexibility. There are so many variants, but that's the beauty. Whomever you are, and Pierre said it earlier, depending on what you want to bring, what's your asset, what you want to do. I think you should try, think about it, and but don't assume that this is going to cost you 2 FTEs, blocked for it. It depends, You sit at the table and say, I can contribute with those samples or with this knowledge, and if the partners are happy with that, fine, you're on board. So it's very flexible.
But one short comment, you mentioned this increased revenue limit for the SME definition, but you have increased only the revenue limit. And in my personal situation, we are not a SME because due to this definition, because the staff count in the whole investors group is too big. And that's a situation having family offices on board, especially in Germany. I know this is a situation. This was great to increase this limit, but it was not the solution for companies.
Okay.
This I know is a very specific German, I think.
Yeah,
because of the structure
unfortunately.
of the investors in Germany, that are related to big families and big groups.
Okay.
This we are aware, sorry, of that. Next, for IMA 3, we will correct that. So with that, unless there are any urgent questions, I would like to close this session. Thanking Pierre and all the colleagues for coming here and spending these 2 hours with us. I think there is a lot of food for thought, and I'm sure that somebody has taken concrete notes. And definitely I would like to repeat on behalf also of my successor the availability and the willingness of EBE to facilitate contacts between IMAI leadership and either European or national associations and fora where these discussions can be repeated and bring to concrete results so that we can reach together the 20% or even more target of participation for small and medium companies. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to those of you that have followed us online. And of course, Dwayne, correct me if I'm wrong, the webcast will be available even later for those who missed the opportunity to follow us today. Thank you very much. And I think for those of you who are here, there is a reception outside so that we can continue one-to-one discussion. Thank you to all of you.
And I have copies of the concept paper for the advanced therapies of anybody who wants one. Please come and go ahead.
I'd love to be involved there. I don't know if we will be the ones commercializing it, but it's such an interesting topic.
There are different options on the table, and there was one guy from the food economy or whatever come from IEs, and it's great. It's
Very, very interesting. It's a great topic for IMI.
if you look at the big data, Sweden, Norway, so that's what we need to do. Bring those people over. Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, so the issue of